Seems we are ready. So good morning, everybody. My name is Jean-Marie Verdun. I do work at HPE. I was there last year with Scaleway people to introduce our plan around open source firmware and what we were expecting to do during the year. I'm pretty happy to get back to the OCP Summit this year just to update you on what happened during the year and the tremendous achievement that we have done together regarding open source firmware and deployment. So I'm there with Stephane Dutilleul, who is VP of Hardware at Scaleway, and Elyès, Zekri, who is working at Scaleway as an engineering manager and focused on open source firmware deployment, specifically OpenBMC. So the whole story started during the pandemic, and we reviewed the way we develop firmware. So it was pretty manual process. So each time we had an issue with firmware, we had to update the hardware and replace chip. And during the pandemic, we had to do that at home, and it was a little bit painful. And we definitely took the decision that we need to run, to change the way we design and we test open source firmware and proprietary firmware too. And we decided to develop a tool which is called OSFCI, and that we brought back to the Open Compute Foundation, I think about 2 years ago now. So the main goal of the tool is to automatize the whole process of firmware development, from compilation to deployment and testing, and also to provide a user-facing tool to test firmware before field deployment, avoiding that systems met bad conditions. Based on this tool, we spent some time to discuss with the OCP foundations because we were pretty happy about the outcome, and we took the decision to open up the first Open Compute Experience Center related to open source firmware in Houston. It is currently hosted by HPE. It is available on the web, and we stack up a bunch of hardware which is based on Gen 11 servers on which anybody around the world can test open source firmware. So the only one condition is to open up an account and then use the platform just to validate OpenBMC image or even ROM image on these machines. There's no risk to the machines. You cannot break them. You cannot break them, but you can enjoy the benefit of testing your own source tree on these platforms. So we do have a full rack, and that rack is hosting currently at least 3 test servers, which are based on the RL300, the DL385, and the DL345. And I think there is also a DL360 from Intel. It's connected on the internet. You can see the web page to access it. And as you can see, we have empty space. So this is an OCP Experience Center. We are open to host hardware from other companies. The main goal here is really to create a community spirit around open source firmware and just to give access to hardware to the community. So there's no reason why there should be only HPE equipment into that rack. It could be from different vendors. The only one constraint is that this rack is 19 inches. But we work with Scaleway just to fix that issue. Just before handing over to Scaleway people, let me focus a little bit on the CI by itself and how it works. So we got a tool which is fully written in Go. It's fully open source. You can become a contributor if some features are missing or lacking. And if you have a great idea, do not hesitate to implement it and send pull request on GitHub. So the way we break down the tool is through a modular approach. So we have nodes that we call SUT, which are system under test. And that's the target node. We have a backend for compilations and image generations. And we have what we call a controller node for each SUT, which is delivering the image to the machine under test. And that modularity is giving us the flexibility to be highly scalable. So we can add easily hardware without having to redesign the whole infrastructure. And that is why we also decided to open up that OCP Experience Center. So you get there a basic block diagram of the tool. So the narrow rectangle here is a main focus on on the system under test. In that case, this is a DL385. What you can do for testing is you can boot the open source firmware image, but you can also boot a local operating system, because I think it's really key to test an end-to-end solution. It's not because your firmware is booting that you can boot successfully an operating system. You might have some bad ACPI setups, or you might have some bad communication between the BMC and the host, and we need to test that. And to do that, we have implemented all the hardware features which are required to do that remotely. And this is available straightforward right now. So the source code, as I said, has been provided to the Open Compute Foundation. It's available on GitHub through the OSFCI project name. It is free software, but you can also contribute by sending us hardware to put this hardware online and bringing patches to the software. And you can work also on automatic testing. I think it's really critical as a community that we try to enhance the testing of firmware just to avoid any security issues or lacking of features. The initial outcome that we had regarding this program is mainly that we have been able to enable OpenBMC successfully on the whole ProLiant family, the Gen 11 version, and that is a great news. We used extensively that tool to make it a success. We are also testing at scale the GXP ASIC drivers when running Linux. So the GXP ASIC is the BMC ASIC that we are using into all of the ProLiant systems, and that is a critical component within our management stack. We also have initial trials with end users. I think it's also something important. Scaleway tested it, but we have also a lot of different end users which are relying on this tool to test open source firmware and validate their patches before even trying to upstream them into the relevant open source project like the Linux kernel or U-boot or the various components of OpenBMC. And the great news is that the tool has proven to be super efficient in North America, and we took the decision to open up a point of presence in Europe. And Scaleway took the leadership around that, and that is also why they are here. So let me introduce you to Stephane, who is going to present you quickly Scaleway, and then Elyès is going to focus on the Experience Center.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. Hi, everyone. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about Scaleway first. So Scaleway is a cloud provider. We are based in France. We do operate in several countries in Europe. We were founded in 1999, and I think as of today, we have the most complete cloud ecosystem in Europe. As I said, we do operate data centers, sustainable data centers in France, but also in Poland and Netherlands. Our flagship, DC5, is hosted at Opcore, which is another subsidiary company of the Elyès group. And it's a very sustainable data center with a PUE of 115. The goal here is to make sure that we can maximize the saving for us, but also to limit the impact on the environment. This data center is very specific because we are not using any forced cooling. We are using free and adiabatic cooling, so no AC in the DC. Finally, from a sustainability perspective, we have this policy and program called Second Life. The goal here is to use the server up to 10 years, which is far more than the usual industry standard. And the goal, again, is to reduce the carbon footprint and to limit the energy waste. Like Jean-Marie said, over the last few months, we have been collaborating with HPE on the OpenBMC program, trying to move forward. And so the reason why we are here also today is that we are very proud and pleased to announce that we are hosting this experience center in France, in our data center. Just like Jean-Marie said, the idea is to provide a platform available for testing the OpenBMC, testing the open firmware in our site, and in collaboration and partnership with HPE. So the site is online, ue.osfci.tech. We are still working on some details to finish. It should be available very quickly in the next few days. So we are very happy to work on this. For this experience center at Scaleway, we are using for now one rack, using only HPE server as well. But the next step will be to add more servers, as Jean-Marie said, and also to add an Open Rack v3 to the configuration, so we can host even more pieces of hardware and different pieces of hardware. So like I said, the website is online, and it will be operational in the next few days. So like I said, we started this journey with Jean-Marie and Elyès in the last few months. So I'm handed over to Elyès for providing more information about the OpenBMC work or activity at Scaleway.
So let me briefly present you the OpenBMC journey at Scaleway. And I will start by the fact that Scaleway is, as many other cloud service providers, maintaining a huge number of old and new servers, embedding several firmware stacks from different suppliers and vendors. And this, as you can imagine, implies many issues at many levels regarding firmware heterogeneity. For instance, when we deal with hardware testing, we have to adapt each time a new server has to be integrated with this complexity, as well for hardware automation in production, etc. So to address these kind of issues, our willingness is to use a single multi-vendor firmware image regarding BMC, which is an OpenBMC based. So this will allow us to maintain a single firmware code base in our CI/CD. Then it will let us implement our own custom features when these features are not fully fulfilled by the firmware vendors. It will also allow us to use the interoperable and secure Redfish interface, which is always up to date in OpenBMC. And the most important point is that it will allow us to break the vendor lock-in, especially when servers come to end of service or end of support. With OpenBMC, we've tried to implement a proof of concept internally at Scaleway by demonstrating the integration of OpenBMC in our existing inventory system. So with an OpenBMC image already tested in the Houston Experience Center last year, at the end of the last year, we've integrated some custom features in the Linux image of OpenBMC to allow the OpenBMC image to push data every 30 seconds to our discovery system based on HashiCorp console solution. This sent data is, to summarize, dealing with network information, such as presence of the BMC on the network, but also it's related to service statuses like IPMI daemon or the Redfish and web server daemon. It also, we also send system health data like CPU usage, disk usage, and memory usage. So as I said, to achieve this, we've slightly changed the recipes regarding OpenBMC build. And what could be done next is some other custom features like adapting and customizing the fan regulation behavior of the BMC to adapt it to our data center constraints. That could be the next proof of concept. I would like to show you very quickly what the discovery system looks like. This is console with the data pushed from the BMC to the discovery service. And here we have data like service presence, IPMI state, SSH server state, etc. So at a glance, we have an overview of all internal BMC health data. And now I will hand over to Jean-Marie to finish the presentation. Sorry.
So we started from a white page about 3 years ago regarding OpenBMC. I think my first talk as being an HPE employee around the Open Source Firmware was, just before the pandemic. And from that white pages, we went from nothing to enabling OpenBMC on a custom ASIC designed by HPE. We believe that our implementation is getting better and better every day, setting up the right toolings, giving these toolings to the open source community, and starting to deliver systems which are enabled with OpenBMC from day one. I think what happened during the past 3 years is just a tremendous step forward, and I'd be extremely happy to see the community embracing that approach and helping us to enhance these experience centers by providing hardware from competitors, because Scaleway goals, as mentioned, is just to be sure that they can run OpenBMC image on many different vendors. So we still have a huge amount of work just to achieve that goal, but as a community, we probably can be very efficient. I'm extremely proud to see HPE being involved into that journey, and I believe that the future of open source firmware is going to be bright. So you have on this slide all the relevant data and information just to create your own account on OSFCI tools. So if you are based in the US, I may recommend you to use the US-based tools, but you can also enjoy the one in Europe. As Stephane mentioned, there will be an open rack available in Europe, and I think it's also critical for OCP adoptions. We have announced these 2 OCP Experience Center, I think, yesterday. So they are now online on the marketplace from the Open Compute Project Foundation. And as I said, you can contribute to the tool by itself. So all of that will be enhanced in the near future, and I hope we will have the opportunity to come back next year to present you what's next, and the upcoming achievement that we will have done, at least in Europe or in the US, regarding OpenBMC. I don't know if you have any questions. I forgot to mention one thing. We have a demo on HPE booth and within the Experience Center. So in the Experience Center, you have an OSFCI demo, and on the HPE booth, you get OpenBMC running on ProLiant. And let's go for the questions. Go ahead.
So is the project, so if I understood correctly, the project is currently only supporting OpenBMC, right? I mean, are you thinking about adding other open source firmware such as, EDK2, Linuxboot as well, the other side of the firmware stack?
Yeah. We mainly focused on OpenBMC during that talk, but the OSFCI tools is not dependent on the firmware. It's giving you access to, I would say, naked hardware. So you can load any kind of firmware. It could be OpenBMC, UBMC, and on the ROM side, so on the BIOS side, you can load your own BIOS image. So if you want to build an EDK2 image and try to boot it on the platform, you can do that. That will be tough, probably, because HPE servers are using their own BIOS image. But we are working on opening up that area too.
And I suppose everything is done through Redfish commands, IPMI too, so it should be pretty standard, right?
Oops. Sorry, that's my earthquake alert. Don't worry. I hope so. It's not done through redfish command. So you get a UI, and through that UI, you can load OpenBMC or firmware images. And then you get, I think everybody is receiving an alert.
That's great.
But that's in Sacramento County. Should be far away. I don't know what to do. I have to admit. So just be ready just in case you feel anything. No, we do not use redfish to load firmware to the test platforms. You have to go through the web UI, and we have a specific API if you want to use scripting. And this API is going to give you remote access. So you open up a session, and then you send your firmware image, you send your testing script, and you get the feedback from the tool.
It's not a question. I just wanted to congratulate you on upstreaming the code to both Linux and U-boot. It's really nice to see vendors doing that.
Thank you.
Quick question. If you're doing work and you break the system, is there remote hands in this lab that is accessible remotely? What can you say about that?
The goal is not to break the system. So we try to put all the features to avoid that. So roughly, we get flash emulators everywhere. And we have remote control on the AC. So we can turn off, and we can pull the AC on and off. In the case we break the systems, you send an email, so you go to Discord and request for help. And we'll be sending a technician. At least in Houston, we got local technicians. They are not into the data center, so you might be expecting some latency between the fix, but nobody is going to complain because you break a system. So the main goal here is really to test firmware. So we know that it could lead to failures. So, but up to now, we didn't break that many systems. So we got bugs into the software stack, and that we are improving every day. But usually they are not related to the hardware, and we can recover remotely most of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Are we on time? We are just on time, I think. So thank you very much. As I said, come to our booth or the Experience Center. Dan and Charles will be happy to run you a demo, as well as Arun. And we have a talk about the tool by itself, how to use it this afternoon. Thank you. Have a great day.